What's up, guys? Welcome to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at Apple, ticker symbol AAPL, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Monday, February 5th. Well, Apple on Friday, finishing the day down about a point, about 0.5% here, making quite the rebound from Thursday's earnings drop off there in after hours. Here's the 1-minute chart. Again, we're going to take a look at a variety of time frames here. Couple of things I do want to make sure you guys are aware of here on the 1-minute chart. You can see here, making a grind upside hard against that volume weighted average price 2 standard deviation band there, opening up a variety of scalp opportunities, particularly to the short side off of tests here. I'm sure we saw some traders taking those there on Friday. And the test that I found the most interesting here was this one, right at about 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. If you guys do want to get scalp setup alerts, swing trade setup alerts, unusual options activity, or potentially platinum one-on-one, take a look at that link in the pinned comment. That's where you will find access to that. Hope to see you join, get grandfathered in at the current rate. Let's take a look at the 5-minute chart here and look at volume, because this is where things get really interesting. Again, we saw this big pump reclaiming what we had lost on Thursday in the after hours. And take a look here. This pump was actually on pretty substantial volume to the upside, which, remember, when a stock is making a move in your favor, or more so in the favor of your current bias, you want it to be doing so on ideally as high a volume as possible, right? So here, the bulls should be pretty happy about that. Now, this really high volume, 8.5 million shares upon the close, I would not be surprised at all if that were a data error. We've seen, particularly on Friday, we saw a variety of this same thing on a number of tickers. So it really wouldn't surprise me at all if that was a data error. But again, you bulls, this big volume to the upside, that's good. Again, you want to see low volume pullbacks if you're bullish, and high volume pumps. Okay, and you can see here this middle of the day pullback back to the 50-period moving average was on pretty average volume, not much increase there when the stock started to fall. Okay, let's get a little bit more contextual now and look at the 30-minute chart on a more of a day-to-day basis, looking at those self-fulfilling prophecy indicators, such as the 50-period and the 200-period moving averages. So, of course, on Thursday, we gave up that 50-period moving average, but we, of course, reclaimed it. We didn't really get a great test. Now, why are we looking at this to begin with, right? The 30-minute, the 4-hour, and also the daily chart, those are going to be some of the most popular and most heavily watched. Of course, Apple being one of the biggest companies on the planet now, Microsoft making a run for that. This here, the 30-minute chart with the 50-period and the 200-period, this is going to be one of the most heavily watched charts on the planet, along with the 4-hour and the daily here. So I want to be aware of what other traders and institutions and algorithms are looking at, so that we can try to make decisions around the same areas that we can expect other traders will also be making decisions. Turns into that self-fulfilling prophecy mentality. So if you are bullish here heading into Monday, looking at the 30-minute chart, ideally you'd want to see this 50-period right around 184.30 hold as a support level. If you're bearish, of course, you'd want to see that break to the downside. All right, let's move on now to the 4-hour and take a look. Of course, the most immediately relevant areas, that 50-period, the 200-period, those are up around 190 right now. So we're looking at about a 2-3% move approximately, really, to hit those. On Apple, typically, that's going to be a couple of days at least worth of movement, unless we had an incredibly volatile day on Monday. But if we look here on the 4-hour, we can see that there is somewhat of a technical level right around 185.75-ish, kind of like that 186 range. I'll pay attention to that just because it's there. But to be honest with you guys, the 4-hour to me is kind of taking a back seat to the 30-minute heading into Monday. All right. Now, this is the most important of them all. Let's take a look at the daily chart here on Apple. So you can see that we bounced back above that 200-day moving average, and the 50-day moving average is now forming a channel. Now, understand here that these two indicators, the 50 and the 200 on the daily chart, this exact chart that I'm showing you right now, since it's on Apple, is going to be one of probably the top 5 most heavily watched charts on the planet, at least as it relates to stocks. This chart on a stock as big as Apple legitimately has the power to move the entire market. So we need to look at this, right? I am paying very close attention to that 182.50 range because that's where the 200-day currently sits, and that 190.50 area, which is where the 50-day currently sits. Now, we're kind of currently right in the middle of that channel, so let me lay out a couple of scenarios here. If you're bullish, there's 4 scenarios here. We're going to do bullish and bearish with a test of either direction. If you're bullish and we see a downside test here, you know, again, this movement may take a couple of days or one volatile day, but let's just look at this. Bullish with a downside test, you want to see the 200-day hold as a support level, right? Bullish with an upside test, you want to see the 50-day break, retest, and hold as a support. That would be your ideal scenario. That could potentially open up a big, huge test of $200 a share, going to be a massive psychological level. Now, if you're bearish and we see a downside test, obviously you'd like to see a break downside of that 200-day. That would be very discouraging to a lot of bulls since we've held it reasonably in the recent past. And if you're bearish and we see an upside test, you'd want to see that 50-day hold, reject as support, and then see a fade back down toward the middle of that channel, okay? Now, implied volatility is something that I think we should all be paying attention to, whether we're trading options or just the stock. Tanking off here post earnings from about 29% down to about 22.5%. If you own options, you likely saw a little bit of that IV crush effect, but understand that the lower this goes, right, if we were to start getting down at like below 20%, that opens up some potential opportunity for newer options buyers to get in at a point where they may experience some IV pump effect then in the near future, right? When you're buying options, you always want to buy where you could expect a potential rebound to equilibrium, meaning upside in implied volatility, which means ideally, whether you're buying calls or puts, you'd ideally want to buy when, first of all, the stock is in a position that you think you'll be directionally correct, but also when implied volatility is low compared to the historic, to itself, really. You can't compare Apple's IV to Tesla's IV, but we're at a point where it makes sense for your intended trade time frame, okay? Meaning if you're looking to buy options for 3 months out, you want to make sure in the last 3 to 6 months, it's low, comparatively speaking, to that relevant time frame. All right. Now, let's finish out here by looking at the options chain here on Apple. 2.07 million contracts traded, good sample size. 1.19 million of those were calls, 882,000 of those were puts. So we are seeing the overall call put ratio leaning bullish. And then the short-term speculation, that 0 to 20 delta range, we're seeing 584,000 calls, 415,000 puts. So we're leaning to the bullish side, both from an overall call put ratio perspective and that shorter 0 to 20 delta short-term speculation perspective. So it's interesting to see. That's what the option traders are thinking here as we head into Monday. Hey, listen, before you head out, helps out tremendously. If you leave a comment, let me know what stocks you'd like to see me cover here on the channel in the near future, even if it is just more Apple. That feedback really does help out a ton, and I'll see you in the next one.